Mheshimiwa Rais, ndio mwisho wa ulinzi wa heshima. Naomba kutoa ulinzi wa heshima uwanjani. Mheshimiwa Rais.
Those are live pictures coming from Uganda, of course, courtesy of NBS. That is the budget reading that is today happening in Uganda. And it's not just in Uganda as well. It's in the East African region. I have my colleague Abi Agina in studio. I'd like to pick his business mind. At least he can count 1 to 10. Abi, thank you for your time. So normally we do this with Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda. We did ours before because?
Well, many thanks, Linda. We started off with the budget reading in Kenya. That was in April 2 months ago. This was mainly because we are going to an election. And of course, this had to affect our calendar as Kenya. So we put out a proposal to the EAC heads of state who approved, and Kenya was able to float our 2.7 trillion shilling budget in April. So that's why today we are not having the budget. It's usually done around 8th to the 10th of June.
Yeah, because I remember every year it's usually like it's usually Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda,
correct,
Tanzania.
Correct.
Okay, so looking at these budgets, what sort of numbers are you foreseeing?
Well, for Uganda, we do know that it's an $8 billion budget. That's translating to about 800 billion shillings. So Kenya's budget is almost thrice the size of Uganda's budget. Of course, we do understand that Kenya's economy is also thrice the size of Uganda, making more sense why we have a bigger budget than them. But of course, Uganda's budget has been growing over time. We've seen the numbers shifting. This has been mainly influenced by heavy spending on security, that going to the military. And I've also seen a lot of funds being channeled towards the legal setup, that is the judiciary in Uganda. And right now, this particular year's budget, there seems to be a focus really, Linda, on issues to do with industrial transformation, where we are seeing there's a lot of talk on Uganda trying to run fast and put up a number of structures. You do know Uganda has oil, and they'll be starting production in 2020. Kenya, we're starting in June 26th. We should be exporting our first oil. So there's a heavy focus on agriculture, industries, and of course a lot of industrial talk in the region, really.
Kenya has been going big on infrastructure. Is that something you're seeing around across the region, or is it just Kenya?
That's a very good question, Linda. If you look at the heads of state, they are seeming to be more inclined towards delivering a lot of spend, especially when it comes to infrastructure, because if you know, the infrastructure gap in the region is now at an alarming figure, if I may say so. Infrastructure is the talk right now, Linda. If you go to the G7s, if you go to the World Economic Forums, there's a lot of push and pull around. African governments need to put more funds in infrastructure that touches on roads, health facilities, ICT, and this is expected to spur more jobs and open up these economies. That's the more reason why you're seeing this being the sort of new shift.
Yeah, because even in Kenya, that is the biggest achievement that President Uhuru Kenyatta keeps talking about. And now that you're talking about the East African region, allow me to pick your mind as well on the relationship between East African nations. If you were to look at the relationship between Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda, what sort of relationship would you say there is between these countries? And there's a specific reason I'm asking that.
So the relationship right now, it's a bit frosty, especially between Kenya and Tanzania and Burundi to some extent. As you know, Linda, there's been a new alliance, which is called, it's an alliance that people have coined as the coalition of the willing. So these are countries that are willing to play ball. And so far, you know, Rwanda, Kenya, and Uganda are in that coalition.
Play ball to what?
Playing ball to trying to fast track things that you agree upon.
Oh, okay.
So when we say we're going to remove, for example, work permits, Kenya has lifted work permits, Rwanda has, Uganda has, Tanzania is yet to, Burundi the same. When we say we want to stop using the yellow fever cards at airports, Tanzania is still having it. When we say we want to do the East Africa tourist visa, Kenya, Uganda, Uganda and Rwanda are still the same people doing it. So the relationship hasn't been that good, especially with Kenyans being deported from Tanzania whose work permits have expired.
I saw that.
So the region, of course, is Kenya's biggest market. Right now, over 40% of our exports go to the East African region that consists of electronics, foodstuffs. So it's still a very important market, and we've continued to see a number of economic partnership agreements being brokered between East African countries, but there's still a lot to be done, especially in opening the borders and having that political will. And of course, Linda, you know, we are looking forward to having a monetary union by 2022, where we'll have one common currency. If you go to Tanzania...
Trust me, I'm sitting back and really waiting for the day that will happen.
So many are optimistic, and also in equal measure, a number are still saying, hey, we need to pause for a moment, because where Kenya's economy is not where Burundi is, where Tanzania's is. So Kenya is like the big brother in all this.
We like the shining one,
the
good ones.
Oh, yes.
Okay, listen, the reason I'm asking that is because I know that we've had issues in terms of relationship between the East African countries, but now that the budgets are being read, I know we read ours earlier because of the election. What are the key priority areas that you think the East African nations should focus on going forward?
Well, Linda, very pertinent question there. Right now, East African countries are struggling with dilapidated infrastructure, and this hampers connectivity and the smooth delivery of goods. So one of the big conversations is having a railway that will be linking all these countries. Kenya recently finalized the standard gauge
railway
linking Mombasa and Nairobi.
Oh yeah, by the way, people, those are live pictures from Parliament in Uganda, courtesy of NBS. Go on, Abby.
So right now, if I was to look at the priority agenda, connectivity in the region, this will greatly improve the livelihoods of people, and of course it will spur a stronger East Africa community, because if you look at figures from the World Bank and the IMF, they do indicate that East Africa community integration, the more we integrate, every time it's easy for you to do business in a separate country, it sees the economy grow by about 4%.
But how much of integration is there among these countries?
It's very low. I would say it's very low, because there are lots and lots of interests, Linda. So this also affects the priorities, because, for example, in Uganda, the president's priority is on security, having a strong military that can always ensure you are in power.
I mean, that is slowly becoming everyone's priority right now.
So the other area of priority, Linda, in my estimation, that we are going to see most of the finance ministers channel the money towards is in agriculture. And not just agriculture, but value addition. Value addition entails setting up of industries, setting up of special economic zones, where we can have many organizations coming to set up shop and having an export processing area of sorts. So these are some of the quick, low-hanging fruits that will be critical for the EAC moving forward, especially when it comes to addressing issues of integration.
Agriculture, I'm not so sure a good number of people will agree with you. I mean, after the drought that everyone is facing right now, they're like, why are we focusing on agriculture?
And that's the point, Linda, because at the end of the day, people want to move away from rain-fed agriculture. We have one of the best climates in the region. We have the most arable lands in the region, especially Kenya and Uganda, and some parts of Rwanda. Tanzania is also very fertile. So how do we invest more in irrigation systems and ensure food production is at an all-time high? Because if you look at right now, we're importing maize from Mexico. Why not from Tanzania?
Okay, are you sure that is a conversation you want to start right now, where that maize came from, first of all?
I'd rather keep it at that.
Go on.
So really, Linda, if you are to look at agriculture, it's the backbone of the region. Right now, Uganda is quite big on agriculture. I understand in Uganda, bananas are like flowers.
Abby, those guys have food. You know, like natural food,
That's
bananas,
it.
maize. Yeah. Anything you want.
Yeah, and you've seen the sizes, extra big.
You look at them, you're like, guys,
yeah,
what are you doing right that we are not?
That's the thing, because how do we convert all these resources, the natural resources, to becoming our flagship as a region, because the forefathers that were there of the East Africa community, they envisioned a one united economic bloc where we can negotiate for better terms if it comes to export of issues. And it also helps countries identify their strengths and say, for example, Kenya, you guys are very good in tea and coffee, stick to that. Another country picks another area.
Uganda can do bananas and all that. Kenyans can do maize and potatoes. Ethiopia can do this, and then after all, we can trade in between us, right? Let's talk about the issue of security. This is big, not just for Uganda, like you mentioned. This is something that every single country in the world right now has to consider. Do you think that's going to take up a big chunk in the budget?
Well, Linda, looking at the past allocations to security, I see it rising further. For example, we did see in Kenya, the security docket had a very significant allocation.
Yeah, one of the biggest,
Over 40 billion going to security. I'm yet to know the figures for Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda, but security is becoming a very intrinsic matter for heads of state. Terrorism is a global threat right now. There's the Al-Shabaab question. There's the issue of securing borders. So there's a lot of heavy spending on security because a stable country will definitely be attractive to investors. So the more reason why there's a lot of allocation towards security. But there's the downside as well, because budgets that go to security do not go through the scrutiny that other sectors go through. And of course, they would hide under the name that national security.
I mean, even in Kenya, you can't question whatever they're allocated, how they spend it, where it goes, who takes what.
If Kenya says we're buying fighter jets from the US, I mean, it will be top secret on the amount we spent. And it's classified. So there's a lot of questioning around why is it that there's an increasing appetite for heads of state to increase allocations to security. This is questions that policymakers and the investigative
I think it has a lot, allow me to weigh in, I think it has a lot to do with what's happening in the world right now. When you put in mind the attacks in the United Kingdom, we've had attacks here in Kenya as well, in Uganda, in the entire region. And several world leaders have said, look, we're living in a very difficult and different time where security is one of the main concerns. So probably that's one of the reasons why millions, if not billions, will be allocated to security in the region. Final question before I let you go. We've talked about the relationship between the East African countries, and Burundi stands out as one country that seems not to be with the pack. What is the problem?
So Burundi and Tanzania to some extent are more inclined towards the Southern Africa Development Bloc, SADC. And this is because of their geographical positioning. And of course, EAC countries have been pushed to comply to the agreements that have been signed at the EAC treaties. And of course, this, as we know, you have to ensure there's a lot of integrity in your country, transparency. So for Burundi, Burundi actually and South Sudan, Linda, they are more of taking an observer status. Let's see how this thing goes.
Let's sit on the fence and just watch and see how it goes. If it works out, then we'll probably crawl back.
So for Burundi, under the presidency of Pierre Nkurunziza, their focus has been really on creating an economy that is diversified. Because Burundi is very big also on coffee. So their biggest concern right now is what markets can they benefit from? Because it's a very small country to start off. The population is also not that big. So their level of engagement is not as high as we would expect.
Okay, Abby, so now that you got the privilege of traveling the standard gauge railway with the Kenyan President, Uhuru Kenyatta, so let me ask you, and I know you said that we are probably going to expand this thing. What are the chances we would go probably serve our neighboring countries as well?
Well, Linda, from what the President mentioned when he gave an address to the journalists, is that so far the standard gauge railway will continue from Naivasha to Kisumu. That will be the second phase, which will see about 140 billion spent. Thereafter, we are likely to see Uganda, which signed agreements with the China Exim Bank for them to be financed. This will also kick off. That will be connecting Uganda and Rwanda. And then now it's upon Rwanda to take it up with their neighbors, that is Burundi to take it up with DRC Congo. But the biggest concern has been, is this standard gauge railway going to serve the businesses of the region, or is it an interest of the Chinese?
Okay, yeah, that is a different conversation. You don't even want to start having it here.
Sure.
Avi Agina, thank you so much for your insights and just looking at the East African budget that is being read today by Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi as well?
Burundi, no.
Burundi is not.
Yeah.
Aye, Burundi, okay. But thank you so much, Avi, for your time. All right,
Most
people,
welcome.
You're watching Worldview. Like I mentioned, so East African countries are today reading their budget. So we've taken live feed from Uganda, and we'll be having, I believe, stories from there from our sister station NBS. But then it's not just Uganda. We also have Tanzania and Rwanda as well. But